I've had a lot of conversations with people this week that theme around our relationship to self, as usual, the impacts of the experiences we've had in our childhood and throughout our life so far on our sense of belonging and worthiness. And when we have those unhealed spaces, that feels like this hole inside, and it leads to some behaviors and some patterning that's really driven from trying to gain something to fill that hole externally, people pleasing, some codependent patterns of a variety. I think codependency is a pretty broad term that can show up in a variety of different presentations. But when we have that sense of something's not quite full here, intrinsically, deeply, unmovably inside of myself, and so I need to manage all of these conditions outside of me in efforting toward filling that, achieving that, maintaining. That's the word. Maintaining is a piece of that too. Maintaining that status. Because, and I say maintaining because it's built on unsteady ground. It is wavering. So it requires a steady stoking. We have to continue to feed it, poke and prod to test to make sure it's still there. It's very conditional in nature, that anything that is patterned in that I'm looking to establish this and feel this inside of myself from the connection with you, from these relational dynamics. And I've drawn some concentric circles as I'm talking about this with people, and we notice this pattern of you tend to feel often like you are on the outside, and that does not feel good. And you'd like to be on the inside. You want that sense of belonging. And yet, when you're invited front and center to that inside, there's a discomfort that says, I don't belong here. What am I doing here? And so you're in this double bind situation. And that's just proof that what we need to heal is inside of us, not external. We hope to get that sense of belonging and a solid identity, intrinsic worth and worthiness that's unmovable through having very secure attachments and healthy patterns in our life when we're growing up during those developmental milestone stages. And that can lead to achieving that. But when that doesn't happen for a kid, when we don't have those experiences and we're left with that hole, once you're an adult, it can no longer be fully built up in the same way. Now it shifts. We've got to do the internal work to be able to shore that up. Otherwise, you're just going to be chained to these performative survival skills and patterning that creates illusions of safety. And I say that because it's requiring the overreaching, it's requiring the efforting, the performance that puts you in a place where you're going to be exhausted. And it's so temporal, because any relationship that seems to be functioning built on the back of that codependency is going to be reinforcing this self-fulfilling prophecy. It's conditional, right? And as I have conversations about this type of thing, worthiness, belonging, intrinsic value, the holidays are approaching. And I've also had a lot of conversations about that. EMDR, eye movement processing around mixed feelings that come up around the holiday season for people, including discomfort with receiving gifts from their loved ones. And my daughter has also just recently started asking me a bunch of questions about, these big existential questions. Why are there bad people in the world? Why are there people that do bad things? Why do good people do bad things? And bad people sometimes do good things. And what makes the difference in all of that? And this came after a night of neither of us sleeping because she was sick with a horrible stomach bug. And then she started in the morning. I was like, "Do you want to?" She started to feel a little better. I said, "Do you want to watch TV or listen to like an audio story or something?" And she's like, "No, I just want to chit chat," because she gets really warm and glowy and sentimental and feels so loved after being tended to and cared for in those vulnerable moments of being sick through the night. So she says, "No, I just want to chit chat," and that's what she wants to chit chat about after a night of no sleep is these incredibly big loaded questions. And part of it was like, why do we have to get sick? Why did God create sickness? Why do I have to experience this way? And how come you don't get sick, but I get sick? And I've answered that question for her repeatedly to try to explain. I got sick like you when I was a little girl too, but it's just hard for her to absorb that when she's noticing mom not getting the stomach bugs that she gets, right? So that load of questions around goodness, badness, conditions, um, mm, the depth of that, right, is so. It makes sense to me that she's thinking about that right now during the holiday season, as we have so much that we're saying to children all the time about you're being watched and you better be good or you're not going to get presents. And there's a lot of conditions here about goodness and not being good. And I had somebody who, has lived a lot of life, who, several people, who are in session with me and processing with EMDR. And up comes these core memories of being a child and trauma and getting one present and connecting that. And it's not about the material nature of that. It's not like I deserve more presents. It's nothing like that. It's the meaning making. It's the internalizing. It's the, I'm not getting my basic needs met all year when it comes to like I have too small of shoes and I need more shoes, but then I get this one gift and I feel uncomfortable to receive a gift because receiving is not familiar to me. And then also when I go to school, everyone else got way more than one gift and I must be bad. I must be a bad kid. And this is happening to kids who already have very unstable foundations. I remember being newer into my practice years ago, and I started off working more with children than adults at one point. And I used to ask this question when I was building treatment plans, and there was a section that we're looking for strengths. And so I would ask kids to pull that out. What is something that makes you feel really good about who you are? What is something that makes you know that you're a good person? And I had a little boy who was sweet. I loved that kid. He was cute as heck, and I loved to see him and work with him. And when I asked that, he just kind of stared at me, and I'm checking for like the comprehension, and then it dawned on me that question for him was faulty because it had an assumption in it, and the assumption was that he believes he's good. And I realized that's what was happening. And so then I pulled it back, scaled it back to the bare bones of that question. Do you believe you're a good person? And he said, I don't know. Right? All sincerity, genuine, raw truth. I'm not sure that I'm a good person. So reinforcement is important. Learning what's appropriate, behavioral dynamics and natural consequences rewards, as we don't want to be dropping into a permissive parenting that we're cloaking as positive parenting, but is actually permissive, because positive parenting has room for discipline in a way that is not punishment, that is boundaried, consistent, has an authoritative leadership, and utilizes natural consequences. However, at the core, underneath all of that, a steady sense of unconditional love and unconditional positive regard. I'm about that. I'm about that. Can we aim to have that underneath everything? I had, I was just thinking if I wanted to tell this little example, and I think I will. One day my daughter had like whipped a little squishy ball at her brother, and she whipped it a little too hard, but it also was like a really squishy thing. So I redirected and said, "Don't, I know that's a soft squishy thing, but I don't like the way that you threw that. It seemed like you were intentionally trying to whip that. Don't do that so hard." And then several minutes went by and we were doing something else. My son picked up a basketball and she wasn't looking, and he huffed it at her. And I looked at his face. I really saw, I was right there watching this whole thing unfold. He did not look like he was doing with intentionality to hurt her. And he's younger as well. But it did. And as soon as that happened, I saw her face and she was hurt. So she didn't even try to lash back at him because she was just hurt. So she started crying and ran into the other room. And I said, "No, you do not do that." And I took the ball away and put it up where he couldn't have access to that anymore. And then I went to check on safety first with my daughter and to make sure she was okay and give her a hug. And meanwhile, my son was very upset, crying in the other room, with a sensitive heart for having been scolded like that, if you will. So I came back out after I made sure that she was okay and went to connect with him. This is rupture, repair, which is going to happen in all relationships. And he's feeling this rupture energy with me from me disciplining and setting that boundary. And a natural consequence, you're not playing with this ball now for a period of time. And so when I come over to try to connect with him, he is crying and trying to, make it clear that he doesn't want me to hug him, right? Like, no, no. And he's scooched himself back into this corner and he's experiencing some sense of shame. And so I kneeled down and got very close to him and said, "Buddy, you're a good person. You have a good heart and I love you. When I was a little girl, I did the same thing. I threw a ball too hard at my brother and it hurt him. And my mom said, 'No, you can't do that.' And she took that ball away from me because I was learning. And I have a good heart and I'm a good person. And I love myself. And I love you. You're a good boy." And as soon as he heard me say that, he softened, the tears turned down. He came over into my arms for a hug. Said, "I love you, buddy. You're a good boy." I still set that boundary. I maintained it. I didn't say, "I'm sorry for taking that ball away from you." He knows, like, you did something you shouldn't do. You can't do that. You're not going to have that ball back for a little bit now as a natural consequence to that. And this is something you did. This is not about who you are. You are a good person. You are a good person. And I think the more you have a parent reflecting that unconditional positive regard and love back to you, then yeah, I'm a good person. And when you know you're good, that is motivation to act in alignment with your true essence. Shame just is not helpful. It's not helpful. It's discouraging. If somebody believes they're bad, what's the point? If I inherently think that I'm a bad person, what do we do with that, right? And so I say all this as we think about how we speak to kids around the holiday season, about Santa, about the naughty list, about good and bad, and how we treat kids, and how much we're holding a steady line of love with ability to teach and lead, versus how much we try to lean on fear as a tool to encourage obedience and accidentally breed shame. That is very counterintuitive to the truth of our soul and human development and psychology.